just ask myself, like, what am I getting out of this bashing my head into the wall? I get an identity that, like, I'm a hard-driven entrepreneur who, like, is an emblem of the hustle culture, that this makes me feel good. Do I really want that? What if I'm an example of someone that is, like, deeply in tune with themselves, conscious, caring, compassionate, and also successful from a business standpoint, instead of someone that sacrificed everything for the business, which I did, by the way.
After selling his last business to the world's largest publicly traded marketing services company, Peter Corbett decided it was time to go sit in a Zen monastery. Since then, he has taken on roles such as coach, meditation teacher, spiritual caregiver, and community builder, just to name a few. I wanted to have Peter on the show because he's a rare combination of someone that's had tremendous business success that has also went to profound depths on his spiritual path. In this conversation, we explore his experience with the Zen tradition and how he has helped himself and others by integrating its wisdom into everyday life to improve well-being and fulfillment.
So in Zen, we would say there's no gift, there's no giver, there's no receiver. It's all one thing. So where am I going to get something from? I don't know. There's nothing to get from anywhere. So what do I do with that? Actually what I do is I, like, approach each moment with kindness and love and compassion, and I align with what is over and over again. And as soon as I notice that I'm out of alignment with it, I can notice it because I feel stress or anxiety or anger or whatever.
Peter and I discuss the counterintuitive path to discovering our deeper purpose in life, which is probably a little bit different than the narrative you've been told.
So therefore, what second mountain do I want to climb? And as I said, I think that's incredibly frustrating and maddening. What I can see now, because I have 100% clarity on all that for myself, thankfully, that was going to evolve and show itself to me at some point, no matter what. And I had to do nothing about it. That's the message I want everyone to know. You don't need to figure it out. It is being figured out. You are a ball rolling down the hill. You are going to end up where you're going to end up. In fact, the greatest virtue for someone who is, whether post-exit, having had a good financial outcome, or just in a transition, is to just trust and have patience.
What if finding our deeper path was less about figuring it out and more about our ability to see clearly?
It will reveal itself. So if something reveals itself, what is required on the other side? We have to see it. Things can reveal themselves all the time, but if we've got blinders on, we're not going to see it. If we've got blinders of, we drink too much, we have negative mental chatter all day, we watch too much sports, like, we're just not going to see it. It's going to pass us, and then we're going to have to wait for that thing to reveal itself to us again. Going to have to wait a little while for someone else to be the catalyst for revealing to me what, in fact, is the path that I'm on. I'm not saying should be on. I'm on it. I just happen to have a blindfold on while I'm walking it sometimes. So we have practices to take that blindfold off.
Peter shares what he's come to understand about the nature of reality and how our search always comes back to looking within.
And I'll say, what is it about vortexes that are so attractive to you? And what it turns out is that they're searching for something outside themselves to attend to some kind of pain and suffering in their life. When in the Zen tradition, A, there's no self, B, there's nothing outside of it. So we look within. I don't need crystals, unicorns, rainbows, or vortices. You need to sit on the cushion and come back over and over again and let the fall away. And when I do that, the true nature of reality reveals itself, and it's incredible. And it's the most psychedelic thing. There's nothing more psychedelic to me than Zen practice. And I don't mean in terms of like fractals and colors. I mean like, holy shit, this universe is incredible. Wow.
Before we get into this conversation, I want to ask you to join this amazing community of consciousness explorers. This whole idea of pursuing expanded consciousness and the boundaries of human potential while living a modern life is relatively new, which is why we interview revered masters, teachers, experts, and practitioners to help you on your own journey. To stay up to date on the latest conversations, simply click subscribe below and you'll be notified each time a new episode comes out. I am so grateful for all of your support and comments. I love reading them. Now let's dive into this conversation. Hey, Peter, how are you?
I am so well. It is spring, and that is one of my favorite times of year.
I love it, man. I love it. Before the episode, we were talking all about your epic gardening and harvest and feeling a lot of personal inspiration. Maybe we'll go there today, but where I want to start the conversation is your explorations. And we've had some discussions kind of about our shared histories of entrepreneurship and then spirituality, inner transformation, how those things blend. And I'd love to learn, how your exploration of Zen and wisdom traditions really emerged in your life.
I'll try not to make this too long of an answer, but I went to Emory University, and there was a Tibetan studies program. And the Dalai Lama had established that at Emory. And so I came in contact with Buddhism, I guess, when I was about 18, and took a couple classes and started meditating. And it just completely blew my mind. I had been raised Catholic, and perhaps if I had been brought up in a mystical Christian tradition, I might have gotten a better effect. But this specific philosophy or religion, Buddhism specifically, just resonated so much better with me. One that meant I had to sort of really look at myself. I had to look at the nature of reality. I needed to question essentially everything and verify it for myself. And that led to, I guess now it's been 25 years of Buddhist study and practice, and Zen only really in the past 6 years. So it was always Tibetan. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was the first teacher I really read extensively. And 6 years ago, I went to Zen Mountain Monastery outside of Woodstock, New York, sat Zazen for the first time. That's the seated form that Zen practitioners sit. And I was like, oh my God, this is for me. This is the glove that fits my hand. I don't need to go find anything else. And so that's been the case since then.
And was that just kind of an inner knowing? Was it a full body sensorial feeling? How did that express for you that you just knew?
And everything knowing, on the intellectual level, on the body level, on the energetic spiritual level, it was just a full aha. Yeah. Brought
amazing
tears to my eyes. Really, really. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And was that post your acquisition, selling your company, or during that you discovered Zen?
So I sold my company in 2016. I was 36 years old. I set out from that moment I stayed on board for 18 months. That's a whole nother story. And got deep into, let's just call it consciousness expanding practices, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about here, and did not immediately get into Zen. I went right back to the root of all of it, really, the Vedic tradition. So non-dual Shaiva Tantra is like a 4,000-year-old philosophy and the underpinnings of Hinduism and Buddhism. So I wanted to see, where did all this stuff come from? And as I went through that Vedic study, it just popped into my head, you've never studied Zen ever. What? Maybe you want to have a look at that. And I just was so incredibly surprised.
Amazing. And then how did this, I know that we've talked kind of a lot about bridging these contemplative practices and the wisdom that emerges from them into practical reality, into being an entrepreneur, into being a leader. And I know that that's something that you're passionate about. And I know it's something that you also work with a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs on. And so talk to me kind of about how Zen and leadership, that interplay, shows up in your world.
Yeah. So there's a yogic tradition called karma yoga. So for those listening, you can look that up. And that was really my practice until I found Zen. And what karma yoga is that every specific moment is the work for you to do. That moment is the spiritual work. It's the everything work. There is nothing that is coming your way that is not essentially what it is that you should be facing and attending to. So when I arrived at the monastery, at Zen Monastery, and I sat in what's called Dokusan. That's face-to-face, one-on-one teaching with a Roshi. So I sat face-to-face with Shugen Roshi, and he said, "What's your practice?" And I said, "Karma yoga." And he knew what that was. And it turns out in Zen that we don't call it karma yoga. It's often called continuous practice. So we might sit zazen, a half-hour period or for hours at a time or what have you. But how do you bring it off the cushion? So in the yogic tradition, that's karma yoga. And then in the Zen tradition, it's continuous practice. So the way that I engage in continuous practice is that every single moment, whether it's a plumber that's showing up at my house or it's a bumblebee landing next to the tomato blossom that is right by my face as I'm pruning the tomatoes, this is the moment. I am not only meant to be here, but I could not be anywhere else. And that the entire thing is both my teacher and so I'm a student, but I am also engaged as a teacher in that moment. So this teacher-student duality kind of dissolves in a wonderful way. And it's a life spent engaged in real time, present with everything that arises. And it turns out that is anathema to our modern world of TikToks and Instagrams and lots of email and tweets and whatever. So I could talk a little more tactically about how to bring that in, but that's the overarching sort of Zen point of view related to karma yoga.
I love that. And I actually didn't know that about Zen. So I'm so happy we're talking about it, because I would define my practice as karma yoga, really kind of translating reality and its unfolding as my guide to my evolution. And so it's really cool to hear that exists in traditions I haven't spent as much time exploring. And moreover, I would just comment that idea can sound quite exhausting and terrible to a lot of people, but it seems like it's been my experience, and I imagine because you've just continued down the path, your experience, that it actually transforms the mundane into the miraculous. It's like this constant, beautiful, profound discovery where there's so much more meaning infused to all components of life. And life becomes your meditation, and that, to me, that's a message I'm really passionate about sharing with others.
It's not only that, it infuses each given moment with much more, I would say, wonder and awe. The infusing doesn't need to happen. It is already there, right? So this kind of practice reveals that all of that wonder and magic is already present with everything. And for those who would be concerned that this is somehow exhausting to continuously practice, Zen specifically in any given moment. In fact, it's a tremendous relief, and it takes a lot less energy. I kind of view it as I'm merely a snowball rolling down the hill. Now, we don't typically see ourselves that way. We think I need to roll myself up the hill. I need to be a certain size, bigger or smaller. I see a bump down there. I need to stop myself. Instead, all the things that are happening, I am merely rolling down the hill. And if I can see this life that way, that it's all just unfolding, and we'll use that word a lot here, maybe. Wow, what a relief. I seem to think it's all up to me. Oh, it's up to me. I got to do it. I'm the doer. Yeah, not so much. I'm rolling down the hill.
Yeah, this notion, it's I think a lot of people, myself included, apply that same kind of willpower, self-determinant worldview to their spiritual search when they come to spirituality. And they believe that it's about finding the right book and the right teacher and the next thing and doing the technique right and all of these things. And it's like the ambition has been overlaid on top of spirituality, yet we can't see it. And when you realize that it's like everything you need it comes to you. In fact, it's just there. Like it is the biggest pressure release you could possibly imagine. And what a gift. What a gift.
You're right. You're right about that. I believe I applied that sort of ambition to my early spiritual path, and now it feels totally different. I can see clearly that it's not only erroneous, but it's just ridiculous. It's like totally, what am I endeavoring to achieve? What? Huh? What can't? So in Zen, we would say, there's no gift, there's no giver, there's no receiver. It's all one thing. So where am I going to get something from? I don't know. There's nothing to get from anywhere. So what do I do with that? Actually what I do is I like approach each moment with kindness and love and compassion, and I align with what is over and over again. And as soon as I notice that I'm out of alignment with it, I can notice it because I feel stress or anxiety or anger or whatever. And so if we can be attuned to, this body, that's basically just a sensor telling us like, you're out of alignment with what is, then I can go, let me just take a breath, or let me go sit, or let me go take some mushrooms if it's a lot of out of alignmentness. Yeah.
We all love a good healthy dose of mushrooms once in a while.
Right. That's right.
So this is I think an interesting point to touch on, because I think a lot of people hear that idea as maybe kind of someone who is running a company or, has a lot of responsibility, and conflate that posture with apathy or a lack of capacity to do anything in the world. And I would be curious how you respond to that.
Yeah. So part of my time is spent as an executive coach working with CEOs. And I resisted that for a long time. We can talk about why, but that's something that comes up. They go, wait, like, are you saying like go with the flow? And what I'll say is actually like see the flow, see it, because you're not seeing it. That's why it's so hard. And that's why you're fighting so much. And you've been fighting yourself for 3 months as to whether or not you should fire your, head salesperson, but you already can see the flow of it is that they're leaving. So it's really, rather than quote unquote, go with the flow and lacking volition, I would just say like, be very clear about the flow that you're in. Be very clear about the hill you're rolling down and the ball that you are, that you're those selves that constitute you. And when you can see that more clearly, it's much more easy to accept what's happening, because we actually can't control almost everything. There's very little that we actually have so much volition over that I can see. And the things that we can have influence over, we don't get so attached to the outcome. You go, I'm going to try to influence this. We'll make it very tactical. I want to increase revenue 50% year over year. Going to work really hard to make that happen. We landed at 20. Okay. That's what was going to happen. That's the best we could do based on the million causes and conditions that inform into that number. Every minute of every day for every human that works in the business, and every consumer that wants something, and every marketing channel that was effective or not, or the macroeconomic picture or the politics, like how much of this do you control? And it turns out that that's a real relief for a leader to know that, I only really have influence over a little bit. And I'm burnt out because I feel like I have influence over 100% of it. So I'm putting in all this effort to like move 100% of it, but I really can only move like 1 or 2% of stuff, and just a little bit. Okay. How do I identify the stuff that is completely out of my control? How can I identify the stuff that I can merely nudge a bit? And then if I find myself more than nudging, like bulldogging is the word that I would typically use, and I'm bashing my head into a wall all day, every day, and I might just ask myself, like, what am I getting out of this bashing my head into the wall? Oh, I get an identity that like I'm a hard-driven entrepreneur who like is an emblem of the hustle culture, that this makes me feel good. Okay. Do I really want that? What if I'm an example of someone that is like deeply in tune with themselves, conscious, caring, and compassionate, and also successful from a business standpoint, instead of someone that sacrificed everything for the business, which I did, by the way, and we could again talk about that. So yeah, there's a lot in there. It turns out to be a relief when leaders fully understand that this is not in their control.
Yeah, it's amazing how we delude ourselves, right? I mean, that's what comes up for me. And I think what you described is the benefit of some of these practices, at least one of my takeaways from it is just the ability to see clearly. You know, the ability to see these dynamics kind of from a zoomed out perspective, that when we're mired in it, we just don't have the vision. We just don't have the capacity to see that any of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a zoomed out perspective, and there's also like the microscope. And with my wife, she'll say, can you put away the microscope right now? Because I can like look very precisely at what's going on with her, or going on with a coaching client, going on with myself, right? I can see the part, if we talk about IFS here, that's like defending a specific part of their ego structure is triggered. And I can just like go, okay, and this one is doing this, and it needs to talk to that. And that can be exhausting for people to have the microscope. But I would encourage everyone to like hone that one. Have the zoned out view, the full picture view, and then have the like absolute laser like ability to like see what's happening with this specific piece of, I guess I'll just call it karma.
Yeah, that's a cool distinction. I've never thought of it like that. And so,
Try to think about that like bit of karma as, it's like an atom. It's composed of certain molecules. It has bonds. It has velocities. It has a charge. And if we can really see it, like, why did I get angry when my wife said, "Will you make dinner tonight?" Can I see what that is? It's a really small thing. And if I can see it, I won't get angry again. I can let it go. I can see that, oh, well, my mother took care of me this way when I was younger, and I expect that like the woman in my life is going to do that. And like, oh my God, little golf ball of like dinner karma. Who knew?
But when you unwind that little kernel, right? Like how many tens of hundreds of thousands of kind of future interactions are shifted?
Yes.
Right. It's like the most
lovely.
high leverage investment ever.
Oh, I love that you said that. So I do a little blessing when I eat food. And one of the lines of it is, thank you for the million links in the chain that have brought me to this moment. So you're speaking to the million links in the chain after that moment, and a million would be underestimating it.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. I like that blessing. I like that blessing. So I think, kind of for listeners, one thing that is kind of coming up for me is that you can have this lifestyle that you're describing, and that is not going to get in the way of material success. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's where a lot of resistance to some of these practices and really making this making this your lifestyle gets in the way. That concept.
I would suggest that even further, if you have material success, having this kind of perspective is crucial. I'm surrounded with, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of post-exit founders. I know you and I are both that. The amount of suffering that I see among people that are well-resourced is at least on par with those who are not. So, in fact, I think that having let's call it spiritual tradition or a philosophy of life, whatever the phrase might be, is almost completely independent from what we're talking about with regard to livelihood. And in Buddhism, right livelihood is one of the Eightfold Path. And so it's a really, really interesting thing to look at. Right livelihood essentially means that the thing that I do that sustains this life is in total harmony with everything. So if that is what right livelihood is, if you can see clearly, if you go through the Eightfold Path, right view and right understanding and right meditation and right consciousness, all that, right speech, right action, the livelihoods will fall away that are not right for the whole thing. For me, I was building a digital agency. I had about 100 full-time employees, another 150 contractors, tens of millions of dollars of revenue, very profitable, sold it to a public company. And it was completely the wrong livelihood for me at that point. In no way was I fulfilled by building ephemeral social media marketing campaigns for my clients of Volkswagen, Sam Adams, Kroger, Coca-Cola, whatever. The deep well of wisdom that was already in me, thankfully, that I had been cultivating was like, you were not born on this planet to do this shit. You got to do something more important. And I was like, shit, what do I do? I'm a big swinging dick CEO, traveling the world, speaking in 50 countries, on stage in front of thousands and killing it. Oh shit, I have to sell it. And I have to go sit in a monastery now and meditate a lot. Okay. Here we go. So yeah, my livelihood fell away. I was fortunate to sell it for a pretty penny. But it was the wrong livelihood.
How do you see people, we've talked about second mountain before. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's this concept of kind of like finding your thing, right? Yeah. Finding that right livelihood. And there's multiple pathways to try to do that.
Yeah.
How do you think a lot of people do that? And how would you juxtapose that with what you found to be most supportive?
Yeah, I think it's maddening, and I think it is so frustrating. And I think the first 2 years post exit, I was not interested in any way, shape, or form with any kind of second mountain. I was trying to break myself down to nothing, to bare blank canvas, to see, what the fundamental nature of myself was and is. And in the Zen tradition, there is no self. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see that there's really just a blank puff of smoke. So I'm basically free. So I'm free to do and be whatever it is that I want to do and be, and construct whatever identity or self I want to construct. So then I did get into, okay, well, which one do I want to construct? Just, so therefore, what second mountain do I want to climb? And as I said, I think that's incredibly frustrating and maddening. What I can see now, because I have 100% clarity on all that for myself, thankfully, is that was going to evolve and show itself to me at some point, no matter what. And I had to do nothing about it. So that's the message I want everyone to know. Like, you don't need to figure it out. It is being figured out. You are a ball rolling down the hill. You are going to end up where you're going to end up. You're going to go down into valleys and up mountains and down them. And you think you can find the mountains and you can avoid the valleys, but you can't. Sorry. So in fact, the greatest virtue for someone who is, whether post-exit, having had a good financial outcome, or just in a transition, is to just trust and have patience. And that, I'll tell you, the amount of resistance I can imagine just erupted in the people listening to this. Like, what? Patience? The last thing I want to have is patience. I want to figure this out right now. Sorry. It will reveal itself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. I love this so much. I think this is also what I've realized, is that your dharma, whatever your right livelihood, whatever you're supposed to be doing in the world is an emergence. Mm-hmm. It reveals itself as the as the layers fall away and it becomes more clear. And I just laugh so much because like I spend so much freaking energy on things like unique genius discovery and like all of this kind of like mentation around trying to find my thing, which, you know, look, served its purpose. There was a reason for that. All of that, but it just is funny because if I would have had trust, I just would have probably ended up in the same exact position and just not experienced all the suffering.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So just note, I said it will reveal itself. So if something reveals itself, what is required on the other side? We have to see it. So things can reveal themselves all the time, but if we've got blinders on, we're not going to see it. If we've got blinders of we drink too much, we have negative mental, chatter all day, this is going to sound funny, we watch too much sports, like we're just not going to see it. It's going to pass us. It's going to pass us, and then we're going to have to wait for that thing to reveal itself to us again. And the way that these revelations happen are, I find, often through other humans. So was I present enough when I bumped into Scott at the coffee shop? And he said one thing, which was, blah, 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 mental health is so important. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the thing that I should be focused on. And he's telling me, and yes, he's right. And oh my God, my whole body just lit up. Yes. Or was I just on my phone and I'm like texting and some dude trying to talk to me and I'm not paying attention. I'm not present. Gonna have to wait a little while for someone else to be the catalyst for revealing to me what in fact is the path that I'm on. I'm not saying should be on. I'm on it. I just happen to have a blindfold on while I'm walking it sometimes. So we have practices to take that blindfold off.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far. If you like what you hear, let me know by clicking like, subscribing to the channel, and responding with a comment around something that you found interesting in the conversation so far. In addition to these videos, I do a lot of writing on the exploration of consciousness and my own personal revelations in my newsletter called Consciousness, the Doorway to Human Evolution. To receive these updates and more, all you need to do is simply head to the link in the description below and you'll be added to the community of 20,000 plus consciousness explorers receiving weekly ideas and inspiration in their inbox. I look forward to hearing from you there. Now let's get back to the show. How is it that other people reveal this to ourselves, to our perception?
I think there's a lot of ways to answer that. The first is if you meet someone who, is a deeply conscious, present being, they are very intentionally sharing something. Could be verbally, could be physically, could just be their presence. And that's enough. That's a catalyst. That's why people fell in love with gurus in the 60s and 70s, right? Like these presences alone were enough of a catalyst. If this person is not that kind, that they may just be a normal person, maybe a bit unconscious and just, doing their thing, it's my reaction to them that is the revelation. Oh, when that person bumped into me, they weren't thinking, or they were on their phone and at dinner or at a dinner party, and I got triggered by the fact that I'm trying to talk to them and they're doing something more important. Like that reveals to me something. That's also a teaching. They're an incredibly talented teacher by not being present. If I get triggered by it,
I guess,
so long as I can see it.
I guess where I'm kind of going with this is like, what do you view reality is?
Yeah, like, I think I love it.
Like that to me is like the okay, how is it that this thing, this experience could constantly be showing me the things I need to see in perfect choreography for however the frick long it lasts? Like, you know what I mean? It's an amazing thing to consider.
I will make it very easy on you then. And I'll just give you the Zen perspective. Everything is mind. Nothing that you can experience with anything, any of your senses, is anything but mind. Now, I can say your mind, the way we typically say it in Zen is mind, because there's no one to possess it. So it's all mind. That's why.
So essentially, what I'm experiencing is a reflection of mind.
Everything you're experiencing is mind. Is there anything that you can experience that is not? What would be outside of it that you could perceive in some way?
I don't know.
There isn't.
Yeah, this is kind of where I've come to as well, from a different perspective, right? But like, it's there. It just is impossible for such perfection to exist if it was not created by that which it is.
It's an incredibly designed system. And congratulations.
You know what I mean? It's just,
and congratulations for designing it.
It's the most, I'm getting chills. It's just the most, like,
it's amazing.
It's just the craziest thing. It is amazing.
That's why when I'm gardening, my mind is blown every morning. The fact that like seeds even do what they do, like how can I even take that for granted, that these things, and then they become a little sprout, and then there's the plant, and then the bees come over and they do what, it's like, wait, this whole thing is completely interconnected and the most elegant design. And guess what? You did it. It's you. That's you. There you are. You're not watching it. You're not in it. You're not experiencing it. You are it. And on the total flip side of that, people that are depressed, people that are suicidal, and I deal with a lot of that in the work that I do, they're completely disconnected from what they actually are. And the work is to get them reconnected with it. Because when you do, it's magic.
Yeah, there's a sense of, as these kind of progressive revelations come into your awareness, like the main desire, right, is to have more of your experience, have that experience.
That's a classic trap, right?
I would be curious how you would.
Of course I want that. Of course I want every
it.
moment to be bliss. And if it's not, I'm going to be disappointed. And what happened to the bliss?
Well, I was kind of more referencing, like, there's a sense of natural contribution that emerges where you want to help other people, right, sure, with their consciousness.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And in the Zen tradition, that's the Bodhisattva Vow. And that's a vow that I took seriously. I guess I was 18. That's common not only to Zen, but also Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhism in general. And that Bodhisattva is a being that is on the path of awakening, who is essentially going to work for the awakening of everyone else before their own enlightenment. Basically, you're the one that closes the door and turns off the lights after every other sentient being makes their way out. And I think that's a really wonderful sentiment. And it's a way that I live my life, which is like, I basically made it as far as I can tell, financially and all the ways. Why the hell would I roll around in the slop the way that I do? if not for the fact that it's clear to me that I am not separate from everyone else, and that in fact attending to other people's pain and suffering is attending to my pain and suffering. This is me. I, trained in hospice, working with sick and dying people, and did my clinical rotations in an ER and ICU in Brooklyn right up to the pandemic. That dying grandmother is me dying in that bed. I'm attending to me.
I think this is such an important point, because I think a lot of people have this concept of enlightenment or higher consciousness or whatever you want to call some of these depths of experience, and they think that you just become complacent and you just tune out of the world, right? And that doesn't sound like how things unfolded for you.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, wouldn't that be nice if upon enlightenment I could just lay by the pool and drink margaritas? That's quite the opposite. Yeah, when we are fortunate enough to open our eyes and see more clearly, and maybe get a glimpse of enlightenment or nirvana, whatever we may want to call it, what we start to see clearly is the suffering. Before enlightenment, we can walk around ignoring all of it. We can just go to our cubicle and make some money and drive our car and have a wife and 2.5 kids, and it's all good. And as soon as we start opening our eyes, we realize, oh, I'm the one that's warming the planet. I've changed the climate. I put the cows in the factory farm by consuming the way that I do. They're not in there if I don't consume the way that I do. And so we start to see these million links in the chain very clearly. So I would suggest enlightenment is in no way, shape, or form a place to escape to. If in this lifetime we're fortunate enough to experience it and visit it many, many times, more and more as we experience this state, we have more and more responsibility to act. So John Dido Lori, he's one of the Roshi in my lineage, and he founded Zen Mountain Monastery, and he was fond of saying, you have to look at the whole catastrophe. You own it. Scott, I have polluted the oceans. Do you know how many Starbucks cups of mine are floating out there? It's not somebody else.
Yeah. It's very, I don't even know what word to use, but if you kind of arrive at a destination where you start to basically assimilate the mind and the outer experience, and you realize, whoa, this reflection is like self-created in many ways. It's just a very profound, it's just a very wild experience, right? And my sense is, that desire to improve that which you see doesn't need to be conjured, right? It's just kind of like, well, obviously, if this is what I am, then I want to make it better, while simultaneously not feeling like there's a weird tension that I would love to hear you talk about, where it's like, well, how does that jibe with the snowball rolling down the hill concept?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you're
right, like,
yeah, I think what you're speaking to is rather than improve or make better, which I kind of have trouble with thinking that there is any improving or making better. It's easier for me to see it in terms of like attunement. So, in fact, are my actions, which I'm responsible for, are they attuned with what is? Are they attuned with what I can see through the wisdom that I may have cultivated, beneficial to those around me? Or are they causing suffering? Suffering is real. Now we could say, okay, Peter, you're talking about alleviating suffering. Isn't that making things better? Suffering is necessary. In fact, sometimes I won't say things to people that are suffering because I can see very clearly, A, they're not going to listen to me. B, they need to go through this. C, the more pain they experience right now, the faster they're going to get out of this anyway. And D, they're going to benefit more from figuring it out themselves rather than having Peter tell them. So I don't know about like better. I can see that having my actions be aligned with or in tune with what is in service to alleviating suffering in the right way, and sometimes not endeavoring to alleviate suffering, means I am that ball rolling down the hill. If I am trying to stop the rolling, if I'm trying to divert the path, I think I'm just in resistance. That my volition, I want to get somewhere else. I want to get exit number 2, or X amount of net worth. It's just going to be more suffering for me. And I think that being 43 years old, being in middle age now, at least my work in this time is to just allow this unfolding process to proceed and not get in the way of it through too much volition.
I think this is, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because I think a lot of our peers, people listening, they go on this kind of midlife search, right? They do the startup, or they get the big job, or they marry the person, or they do all the external things they think are going to make them happy, make them whole, make them content, fulfilled, all of that. And then people go on this path, right? And so they find their way on this kind of inward search. And many people listening are probably on it. Look, I'm on it in some ways. And it's kind of like, where does this go? You know what I mean? Where does the search take me? And does it ever end, right? Like, I know a lot of people are doing shadow work, and it's like, does the shadow work ever end, right? And so, I'd love to hear just how that has settled for you.
Yeah. I want to address that directly, but first I'll share a little bit of a Zen koan that is related. And the koan is, how do you step from 100-foot pole? So we go on this search. We climb the pole. We climb this 100-foot pole. We're standing at the top of it. How do you take a step from it? So I can't answer it for you. It's not what a koan is for. It's for you to just really let it roll around in your mind and ideally kind of break your intellectual mind a bit and reveal something to you. So the first thing is, we climb these 100-foot poles. That's what we do. We, in fact, are monkeys. That's fine. We're going to climb stuff. That's what we do. That's how we're conditioned. Our society conditions us to do that. Why would we not apply this now? So proceed. You're going to climb. You're going to get to the top of a 100-foot pole and not know what the hell to do. It could be incredibly frustrating. You can say, I've spent years going to yoga retreats and ayahuasca retreats and doing journaling and ikigai exercises and having coaches and therapists, and I'm at the top of this pole. So what has it been like for me to climb the pole? How do I take a step from it? I think the point for me is not to take a step. It's to stop climbing and to not have any preference with regard to if I'm at the top of a 100-foot pole, if I'm sitting on the ground, I'm floating in the sky, I'm at a 250-foot tall one. The climb is not, it's the being there. It's the being, not even a there. So in this time of my life, having engaged in so many of my own practices and for so long, I don't feel in search. I feel that I've found a spiritual tradition. I feel that I've found Zen is my spiritual tradition. I feel that I've found a framework for reality, again, Zen, that everything makes sense through. Maybe I just need to have a framework and others don't. Maybe some people are like, I don't need to have a unified framework for how to approach this life. I'm like, great, I do. It's just my conditioning. It's my karma. And then the question is, okay, so, and what do you do, like, moving forward? And the answer for me in this time is threefold. One, it has to do with the time of year. Is it spring? If it's spring, I'm germinating seeds in the greenhouse. I'm getting ready to plant in the garden. I am deeply engaged in and committed to living in harmony with the earth. Then there's coaching, which maybe only takes about 10 or 15% of my time. It's not a business that I'm building. It's a practice that I offer. And it's because I know very directly that when I offer that, it's tremendously helpful to people. And I don't mean just for their business. I mean, I have clients who, they're alive today because of the work that we do. And finally, the last part is related to that, which is mental health. So it took me, I would say, 5 years of my own intensive climbing of a 100-foot pole to see that, oh, everything I do is really just focused on well-being. And if we don't have mental health, because all is mind, we ain't got no well-being. So the rest of my life can be spent focused on mental health, and I will be on the Bodhisattva path, directly aligned with my Zen spiritual tradition, and I will have no lack of customers. Not that I have customers specifically in a business related to mental health, but that's a problem that is so intractable and in such a position that if I apply the rest of my life to helping make the tiniest dent in it, it'll still just be a tiny dent and a useful one. And I couldn't have figured that one out. It just came. That just comes. But I had enough clarity to see it when it revealed itself.
I love that. And, something I would just comment on is something that I kind of fell into when I observed that originally was like this notion of like, okay, well, fuck, I got to see it right when, like, I got to see it right. I got to be good at seeing. And, the funny thing about that is what I've observed is like, if you don't see it, don't worry, you'll get another opportunity to see it. You'll just get continuous opportunities.
Yes, or you'll die.
And that can create immense amount of peace, or you'll die.
What's the big deal?
And then you'll probably get more opportunities after that. So,
and who knows? But like, what's the big deal, really?
Yeah.
Tell me.
What do I think is a big deal?
What's
I don't think there's a big deal, actually.
And then why do other people think it's a big deal?
Because they can't see.
Well, they think it's a big deal that if I miss it, if I miss the reveal, the thing I'm supposed to do, and perhaps I die before working on the thing, then I've lived a life that was unfulfilled and it wasn't enough. And what are those? Fucking ideas. Stories that we tell that I don't know why you're going to tell that story, frankly. The story I tell myself is if I die tomorrow, like, what an incredible life this has been. And how could I ask for more? Like, how could I possibly ask for one more day? How? I'm 43. Most people say, oh, that's really young to die. And I'd be like, I've lived like 4 lives. I'm like 130 years old of experience as far as I know.
That's amazing that you feel that way.
Yeah.
I love that. One question that I wanted to ask you is, so, having done Zazen, thanks to your instruction, where do some of these modern somatic experiences, what is their role with a contemplative tradition like Zen?
Yeah. So the first thing I will say is Zazen, for those who don't know, it's sitting perfectly still, right? Typically half lotus and following your breath. There's no mantra. There's none of that. And there's no like trying to get rid of your thoughts. Good luck, right? It's not going to happen. But it's a not attending to the thoughts. I like to say not serving them tea. Don't ask the thoughts to come in for a cup of tea as you explore them all. Just letting them go. It being a very, very still practice, most people think that that is not a somatic practice. I actually would suggest that it's just as somatic as ecstatic dance. It's just 180 degrees on the other side of ecstatic dance. So in ecstatic dance, we, moves are, in a revelatory, wild, wonderful, zooming around the room kind of flow. And in Zazen, we absolutely do not move even a flinch, not even the bat of an eye. And it turns out that especially in this day and age, stillness is rare. It is a body practice that I would suggest is perhaps the most important one for everyone to learn and engage in. So that's the first thing I'd just enter with regard to whether or not Zazen is a somatic practice. However, I get the point of your question. It's really important to balance stillness with other things. So, in the yogic traditions, one did yoga, literally hatha, the body yoga movement, in order to get ready for meditation. So we move and we sit, right? I do think that people who only sit, and I've been, guilty of this, get out of balance. My body is not as healthy if I'm just sitting Zazen all day. So I balance it personally with yoga. And I specifically like hot yoga and not cold yoga or normal yoga. So I think it's crucial to have a balanced set of somatic practices. Now, I can't speak specifically to like TM or Vipassana, but because they are seated, similarly, they need to be balanced. It just turns out that Zazen is a bit more, it's not a competition, but it's a bit more rigorous than, let's say TM, where you have a mantra and you're using the mantra to kind of quiet the mind. You don't have that as and I don't mean to disparage TM. It's just, you don't have that crutch. This is just direct to the point. Vipassana obviously is a very, very rigorous sitting practice, which in a Zen intensive, people know about 10-day Vipassana. In a Zen intensive, it's called sesshin. It's 7 days. I've done, I think, almost a dozen of them now. I try to do at least one a year. In between sitting periods, there often will be Qigong. And it turns out that Qigong is like the perfect movement practice to complement what you're doing in Zazen. I found that Tai Chi also is, and Tai Chi and Qigong obviously are very, very similar. But I don't find myself wanting to do yoga in between Zazen sittings.
Cool. That's helpful. The other thing I would be curious to get your perspective on is, everyone has their own way of kind of navigating this exploration that we're talking about. It seems like, to me, from what I've observed, less people are excited as maybe they once used to be about kind of sticking to a lineage. Like, I feel like a lot of people I see are like, it's like shiny object syndrome for like the next hottest, latest thing. And you seem to have really kind of doubled down on Zen for, I don't know if you said it was 6 years ago or 8 years ago or something like that, but what benefit do you see that type of approach?
Yeah, a lot. So there's depth versus breadth, right? And I've had quite a breadth of experiences and study. So there's a tremendous amount of benefit to going really deep in a specific tradition. The amount of hours I've practiced Zen and the amount of reading that I've done and the amount of teachers that I've worked with is just, it's It's voluminous. And still, I'm probably like at the tip of the iceberg. So that's what's exciting to me about Zen, because I'll admit I am an intellectually driven person. Often I love studying. So yeah, I want to read a lot of Zen stuff, even though, a good Zen teacher will tell you that you do not need that. And that Zen, this is the phrase, is beyond words and letters. And it is. I mean, it really is. What the essence is of Zen is well beyond words and letters. However, this intellectual mind loves to study it, loves to read the books. A benefit of not going horizontal, going wide, is, especially in this day and age, maybe more so in the 60s and 70s, there's a lot of bullshit out there. There's a tremendous amount of delusive bullshit. So I'm sorry for all of you listening who believe that placing amethyst crystals on your nipples at night is going to bring you the millions that you expected. It's not. It's bullshit. So I think if we go wide, we open ourselves up to charlatans and delusion. And I have very adeptly avoided that. And I've seen it coming, and I've especially seen it through the plant medicine work that I've done. I've been to a resort in Costa Rica where after ceremony 2, they're trying to sell you $10,000 stem cell rejuvenation processes, which is to shoot lasers into your blood and then inject it back into you. And I'm like, guys, this is total bullshit. So no, I'm not interested in the broad swath of new age charlatanism that is erupted all over the planet in TikTok and Instagram. I prefer a tradition that is battle worn and tried and true and verified personally through my own experience over and over and over again. And any situation that I have come across where I can apply some form of Zen wisdom to, it's clearly been useful and it has not let me down.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. And, one of the other things that I've noticed is like when you have such a diversity of information, when you're constantly exploring things, you can confuse yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like, and it isn't, if you know that there is like a tried and true path that has stood the test of time for hundreds, thousands, years, whatever it is, like what is that? How's that diversity of information really serving you in a way that path couldn't?
Yeah. So there is one way that it does serve me specifically. So I come across a lot of people that have not cultivated as much wisdom as might serve them in their life. And they come to me for advice or coaching or whatever. And they may say something like, oh yeah, well, like I can't wait to go to Joshua Tree because all the vortex is there. And, this is an allusion to like, a new age energy vortex thing, which I'm sure you've heard about in certain places in the world. And I'll say, what is it about vortexes that are so attractive to you? And what it turns out is that they're searching for something outside themselves to attend to some kind of pain and suffering in their life. When in the Zen tradition, A, there's no self. B, there's nothing outside of it. So we look within. I don't need crystals, unicorns, rainbows, or vortices. They just sit on the cushion and come back over and over again and let the bullshit fall away. And when I do that, the true nature of reality reveals itself. And it's incredible. And it's the most psychedelic thing. There's nothing more psychedelic to me than Zen practice. And I don't mean in terms of like fractals and colors. I mean like, holy shit, this universe is incredible. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just come back to the kind of perfection of intelligent design that reveals itself and what that is. And that experience, right, is the most, I have not found something more compelling or interesting or, don't get me wrong, psychedelics can,
how could you?
give you, psychedelics are freaking cool. And, you can get a good carnival ride and some insights and stuff like that. But,
well, there's more to it than that. I'm not suggesting that psychedelics are just a carnival ride. We are biological systems that get screwed up. And I 100% believe and have experienced, whether it's mushrooms or ayahuasca or, ketamine, we need a tune-up here and there. I've been engaged in psychedelic work for 25 years. I've had hundreds of psychedelic experiences. But they pale in comparison specifically to my Zen practice. And that is such a relief, because I have friends that their whole identity has become plant medicine, and it's like ceremony number 5,000 and this shaman and that shaman. I'm just like, when will you stop looking outside?
I think that's a fair point. I think that's a fair point and a good perspective on how these things can exist in harmony.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Maybe we can round this out by just some parting words of wisdom for anyone who's kind of finding themselves in that moment of midlife search.
I would encourage anyone in this moment who is in the midst of a midlife search to trust deeply that the search ends. I'm not suggesting the journey ends. The search ends. It's possible that all of your efforts are for naught. That, in fact, no matter what, it's on your 51st birthday that it will all be revealed. And if you can feel that as a comfort, I hope that for you. And let the worry drop away. Now, it might not be your 51st birthday. It might be your 43rd or your 41st or whatever. But this, acquisitive, self-actualization driven, achievement-oriented midlife approach is brutal. So I would just ask you to stop brutalizing yourself. Some people don't make it through that brutalization. And I say that having had so many friends kill themselves and so many friends overdose on drugs, and they could have treated themselves much more kindly. And if they could have trusted that they would unfold according to some timeline they don't control, they would probably still be here. So just say, go easy. Go easy in midlife. You'll come through it. It will be revealed, and you will be grateful that you didn't spend a decade worrying in a fraught process.
I would say refreshing thoughts in amidst the common narrative. So thank you for that, Peter. Well, I know there's going to be some people that listen to this and are like, okay, Peter's a pretty fascinating, insightful, wise, no self. How can I follow along, and how can I, maybe get to know Peter a little bit better?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Corbett3000. My coaching practice is stillrush.co. So you can go there. There's all the bio, and you can grab some time with me on my calendar there. I do host retreats here and there. I don't have one coming up that is not full, so I don't have a thing to share with you. But reach out to me via email, also peter@stillrush.co, and I'll add you to, an invite for things I do over time. I'm based outside of New York City, so most of my stuff is in the city or upstate. And so I look forward to being connected with you guys.
Right on. And just, for more color, those are kind of mindful leadership oriented retreats.
Yeah.
When they are available.
Yeah. Usually 2 days and 3 nights, intensive meditation, breath work, and nature immersion. We didn't talk a lot about nature, a little bit about gardening, but go sit in the woods for 5 hours by yourself, and you will see something, and come back and tell us. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'll make sure to link all those out for everybody's convenience in the show notes. And thanks again, Peter. This was a wonderful exploration and opportunity to spend some time together. I appreciate all the wisdom that you shared, and we appreciate everybody for listening.
My pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much.